Hi everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar. I think we might have a couple of people still coming, but I wanted to welcome you to our second Manifesto Campaign update webinar, which is being run by EULAR Advocacy, just to give you a sense of what has happened in the past few months, what have we been doing, how you can get involved, and any questions you might have about both the manifesto, the SharePoint, and really anything related to your advocacy. So at the start, I would just like to note that this webinar is being recorded. So if your colleagues would like to watch a recording afterwards, that is entirely possible. And we will just make the recording available to everyone afterwards so that you can review it whenever you need to. For those of you might not be aware of who the two of us are, but I think most of you have at least seen our names somewhere. My name is Alexandra. I'm the advocacy manager at EULAR. I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years now, and I essentially manage everything that's related to our outreach to the European Union and other policy stakeholders. And then there's my colleague Alex. As you can see, I hire explicitly based on sharing the same name. Yeah, Alex, would you like to say something about yourself?
Yes, for sure. I am the advocacy coordinator for EULAR. Greetings, everybody. And I have been working here for a bit over than 1 year, and I assist Alexandra on her day-to-day tasks. And yes, and I also used to be a employee of the European Commission, so I know a bit about the system.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. And we also have Rory Douglas-Hume from Consultancy here. He will probably just chime in if necessary in case I forget something. But for those who don't know, we work with an agency called Hecla Communications. They are based in Brussels, and essentially they are helping us with the outreach to stakeholders there, organizing events, getting RMDs noticed on the policy level. So they are an integral part of our work. So potentially, Rory, please feel free to interrupt me whenever there is something that needs to be said that I haven't mentioned. So as promised, we will start with a short update about what has been going on, and then we will have the space for your questions or any comments that you might have. And that can be about the things that we've done, about the SharePoint, about the campaign, anything that you feel that you would like a bit more clarity about. So it's a short presentation. I'll talk a little bit about the elections that have happened in the European Union that took place in June, so just before the EULAR Congress, what EULAR Advocacy has done in Q3 and Q4, the European Parliament Interest Group on RMDs, which has now been reactivated, which you might know from the previous EU term, the manifesto, and the campaign phase 2. So the EU has elections roughly every 5 years, or maybe I should say exactly every 5 years, and they affect all of the three major institutions. But for the most part, who you are voting for as an EU member are members of the European Parliament. And what that really means is that you get to choose who's representing you there, members of your national parties who then become members of the supergroups within the European Parliament. And what has happened in this past election is that there's been a general shift to the right. So a lot of MEPs who were more on the left side, so the socialists, communists, left-wing people, have been pushed out and been more replaced by people who are leaning towards the conservative side of the spectrum. Nationalists, you may have heard of Orban potentially trying to start a new group within the European Parliament because some people were too right-wing, even for the right wing of the European Parliament. And this is kind of a somewhat disappointing shift for us from an advocacy perspective, because in the healthcare space, the right wing generally does not favor EU-level approaches or international approaches to healthcare and push more for a national kind of strategy in terms of how healthcare should be tackled. So this has kind of been a bit difficult for us, but we have had some good success in reaching out to people, and so far We have not had much to do with the far right. We don't necessarily engage with them directly. And if they were to approach us, it is kind of a EULAR level decision that it would not be someone that we want to engage with necessarily all too closely. Then there's the European Commission, which is the bureaucracy behind everything. So even though one does not vote for members of the Commission, so the College of Commissioners, who you can think of as kind of the ministers for individual subject areas within the European Union, they basically have to be passed by the Parliament. And the nominees have now been submitted by Ursula von der Leyen. And to Ursula von der Leyen, she made a request that every country nominate one or two people, ideally both a man and a woman. And the healthcare commissioner has been selected from Hungary. Now, the good news there is that he is an experienced person. The bad news is that he is also a controversial one. So it is quite possible that within the next 2 weeks, when the Parliament is going to be asking the individual nominees about their plans for their portfolios, the Hungarian commissioner will not be approved simply because he's controversial. He's Hungarian, so the parliamentarians might want to show that they have some level of power over who is being decided there, and also kind of to show Hungary that they are not happy with this nomination. So it's a little bit 50-50 at this point. But in the next few weeks, we will have clarity on this. The hearings there are on the 4th of November, and there should be decisions coming in fairly soon. And then you have the European Council, which is kind of the sort of intergovernmental side of things. So as you may know, the EU functions both as a supranational entity, meaning it's above the member states, and also intergovernmental, meaning it's a collaboration of the member states. And the current holders of the EU presidency are Hungary, who have been pushing very strongly for cardiovascular disease as a major cause of death, particularly in Eastern Europe, but overall in Europe as well. A little bit to balance out against the major focus that there's been on cancer in the past, but also to show that they have a direction in which they want to go for the healthcare side of things. Because they are very set in the disease that they want to tackle, there's not been really much scope for them to have a look at RMDs. So we have mostly been looking at the next countries who are going to hold the EU presidency, that being Cyprus, Poland, and Denmark. Cyprus in particular has been quite receptive to our ideas, and as you will see in the images to come, we managed to speak with a couple of Cypriot MEPs, as well as the former health minister there, as well as their permanent representation to the EU, to the health attachés, and they have been very, very helpful in figuring out what we want to do. And we will also try to reach out to Poland and Denmark. We have not yet had that much success in getting hold of specific people from there. But this sort of gives you an overview of what happened in the past few months. Of course, it'll take a little bit more time before the commission is finalized. Most likely, everything will be put into place at the start of next year. The Parliament has also been a little bit in flux still. They've had some IT issues, some teething problems, but the policy agenda has started being set, and by the end of this year, we should have a good idea of where we're going next. I hope this is also relevant for those of you who are from outside of the EU. We are going to mostly be talking about EU-level campaigning in terms of the manifesto, but I understand that some countries also kind of take the EU's lead or follow what the EU does in terms of advice and potential policy direction. So this is kind of where we are at. Alex, Roy, anything that I've forgotten that you would like to mention at this point before we move on?
Not from my side. That's fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Wonderful. All right. So that is sort of where we have been at. It's been a turbulent 6 months in terms of getting on the healthcare policy agenda, because prior to the elections, everyone was campaigning, so it was difficult to meet people. And now people's calendars have really filled up. So we were very lucky that after the EULAR Congress this year, we were actually quite busy. And we've had 3 trips to Brussels in the past couple of months. I'm just going to have a look at the first 2 in this slide, and then The last one, the most recent one, which was actually last week, in the next slide. So in July and September, we had 17 meetings. And this is largely due to the fact that people just had the space before the summer vacation and immediately after to meet with us. And we managed to meet quite a lot of people spontaneously. You see there listed names of several members of the European Parliament who we met with. Most of them are, well, actually all of them on this list are from the two major parties or party groupings within the European Parliament. So you've got the SND, the Socialists and Democrats, and you've got the EPP, which is the European People's Party. So these are the two big supergroups that are very, very relevant. And we spoke to all of these MEPs or their assistants if they were unable to meet us in person. The ones that really stood out would be MEP Jerkovic over here. She's from Croatia, and she's the vice chair of the SAND committee, which is the major healthcare committee. She's also a professor of anatomy, and I think that was the meeting that really was extremely productive for us, because she was quite shocked to see that there wasn't much being done about RMDs on a formal level within the EU. And she was very supportive of the initiatives that we wanted to take. We also met with Peter Liese, who is a very senior MEP from Germany, who has a big healthcare focus, who directed us towards a couple of other colleagues. Katrin Langensiepen, who's the first disabled MEP or within the European Parliament, who is taking a major stance on disability. Lukas Forlas, who has helped us in the past. PARI members might remember his video from the previous PARI conference. He's from Cyprus. MEP Ayus Saliba from Malta, who agreed to chair our interest group on RMDs pretty much immediately because his mother is also a patient, so that was extremely useful. Monika Pišová, who is the assistant to Miriam Lexman from Slovakia. MEP Lexman was also at our event last week, and she focused very much on the social policy side of things, so return to employment, support in the workplace for people with RMDs. And then MEPs Kaza and Ayus, who are relatively new to the European Parliament. I believe we spent more time with both of their assistants, and they were interested in figuring out what they could potentially do for us, and we're grateful for the information provided. So this is kind of an overview. We are, of course, talking to more people. These were just the in-person meetings. And we are also trying to ensure that we have more people from different parties, different supergroups available. Out of the four mainstream ones, we're only really missing Renew, so those would be the Liberal Democrats. And we're trying to make it very cross-partisan within our contact list and also within the interest group, which I will talk about a little bit later. Then we met with several people from the European Commission. I think we tackled all the three directorates general that are very useful to us. We had a 2-hour conversation with the chief health advisor at DG Sante, who's a very senior doctor as well. And we talked about the workplace shortages with him and the path to becoming a rheumatologist. And he directed us to some of his colleagues who would be very useful to speak to. We spoke to several people at DG Employment about return to work, RMDs at the workplace, and tackling issues that people might have in terms of staying within the workforce. And we spoke to the Research Directorate General in terms of figuring out how we can get more funding for RMDs, how applications work, and how we can best kind of move forward in measuring impact of the projects that are being funded by the EU. Again, these are all people we are still actively talking with. And then these are the permanent representations of EU member states. So every EU member state has a little embassy within Brussels, and you can essentially talk to them about the different topics that you are interested in. We spoke to the healthcare attachés, and they were very intrigued by the idea of taking on RMDs. It was also interesting to see that in their opinion, RMDs were immediately classed as rare diseases, which we kind of pushed back a little bit against because it's not true for all of the diseases. And also that they immediately saw the link between RMDs and what you may have seen in Ursula von der Leyen's call to the European College of Commissioners, that one must quickly tackle degenerative diseases within the healthcare space. So we will try to position ourselves a little bit more there. I see there's a question from Ruth. Would you like to ask?
Just very short. What does DG stand for? That's a department or?
Oh, so DG is Directorate General. So it's the equivalent of the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Employment and Social Affairs, and the Ministry of Research. Thank you for the question. That's relevant. We sometimes get lost in the acronyms a little. And finally, we are also talking with other healthcare stakeholders and also NGOs that are just relevant to what we're doing, who are not necessarily strictly speaking focused on healthcare. So we had the European Institute of Women's Health, H Platform Europe, who were also present at our event within the European Parliament, and then the European Cancer Organization. As you can imagine, cancer and cardiovascular have many NGOs and they're very strong within the healthcare space. So it's always useful to have them on board, or at least get tips from them in terms of what we would like to be doing and what has worked for them in the past. Go, Rory.
And just briefly to say on that other stakeholder list, these are just some of the people that we've spoken to in the July and September meetings, but we have engaged with a much broader array of disease groups covering the comorbidities of RMDs. We were also kind of in regular dialogue with the European Public Services Union, which has also got an interest in promoting an MSD strategy, RMD MSD strategy in Europe to protect healthcare workers. So, yeah, just to say that this is kind of just a selection of the stakeholders we've engaged with in these two meetings, but there's obviously a much broader array of people that we speak to on a regular basis.
MSDs being musculoskeletal diseases, in case that's a point of contention. Within the EU, often there's kind of different acronyms for the same thing, and we are the ones basically pushing for RMDs. That being said, there have been attempts to create an MSD directive in the past, or you will find within European legislation just mention of musculoskeletal diseases or MSKs, musculoskeletal conditions. Did you have another question, Ruth?
Yes, actually. On what grounds did you choose those member of parliaments? And were there any Austrians in there? I thought no, but it's just that I didn't want to miss it.
But that's actually a very good question. Most of these RMDs, if not all of them, have had an interest in healthcare in the past. And that could mean they have proposed something on healthcare legislation, they've submitted amendments in the past, or they're on relevant committees. We have tried as much as possible to engage with the most relevant people, but part of the reason we wanted to meet with all of you is that if you know of an MEP in your country that is interested in healthcare, or if you just know them personally and you think that they would be able to help, they will always be more interested in hearing from you as the potential voters and national level stakeholders. For instance, and we'll get to this, some of the Cypriot MEPs only came to our event or were so supportive because we had Susie Makri from Pare, from Cyprus, with us. So it's also a matter of who's talking necessarily. Yes, Rory, go.
Thanks, Alexandra. I just wanted to build on the point you made about relevant committees. So you will have all seen the EULAR Manifesto, which sets out various objectives that we would like policymakers to help support us to achieve. Key committees to helping us achieve those objectives are the ENVI committee. So that's strangely the Environment and Health Committee. Within that, there is a subcommittee on health called Sant. There's also the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, which is EMPL, abbreviated to EMPL. And then because of the high prevalence of RMDs amongst women and the fact that, there's a live debate around the fact that healthcare has been gendered to a degree and perhaps women have been ignored within healthcare. We're also currently targeting the FEM committee, which focuses on equality for women. So key figures within those key committees are the people that we have kind of initially focused on engaging with. But, there are, 700 MEPs, and we haven't gone broadly to all of them. And so exactly as Alexandra is saying, part of this phase of the campaign is then hoping that, we can work with national organizations to target national groupings of MEPs to kind of bolster the work that we've already done from a kind of a central position.
Also, there are very many new MEPs. I should probably say that. I think probably 40 to 60%. I'm not sure at the exact number, but very many new people have come in. Some of them will probably, yes, Alex, you know the number.
No, I think it's about, no, you're right. I think it's about 40%, but I just wanted to mention that the selection of these relevant MEPs that you could contact you can find them in the shared point next to your country. And they are part of these relevant committees, be it employment, the subcommittee on health, or maybe the Women's Health and Rights Committee as well. So you will find a selection of those that have been either elected now as new MEPs or re-elected, and you can engage with them while seeking their names on the SharePoint. Thank you.
Yes, and because there are so many new people, we also don't know all of them, whereas they might be figures from your national level policy making. So if you think that, let's say, someone is a former health minister or someone who had involvement in the healthcare sector in the past, we had recommendations from a senior MEP whose assistant said, look, we can't join your group, but here are 3 names of other people who are new who we know would be interested. We're very happy to hear about them, and we're also very happy for you to contact them, simply because it's more likely you will have more information about these people. You might already have spoken to them, or someone within your organization has. And also it's just something that hits a little differently when you have an email or a letter in your own language going to them versus us as EULAR Advocacy going in. Yes, Rory.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to, I think Alex saved me there. I just wanted to clarify something that I'd said previously. So although there are a lot of MEPs, and we haven't gone to all of them initially, just to correct what I said previously, we're not actually going to be asking for your help to engage with all 700 MEPs in this phase. We obviously recognize that you guys have limited resources, and we need to be kind of targeted in our approach as well. So we're actually asking for your help to help us engage with the other MEPs on those key committees that I just previously mentioned, just so that you don't think that we're going to be asking you to dedicate yourselves to this campaign for weeks. It's a limited number of MEPs that we're asking you to focus on. So just to clarify that.
I think that's a good point to make, because if you have a large country with 50 plus MEPs, it's important to know who to contact. The sad reality is not all of them will be interested in healthcare. Not all of them will want to make an effort, and not all of them will respond to you. That has also been the case with our outreach efforts. So if there are no more questions on this particular slide, I'll just move to the next one. Wanted to quickly mention that we had a big win coming in, that our chair, Professor Margaret Kloppenburg, was interviewed in Politico, which is kind of the main news publication that everyone in the Brussels bubble reads. And she actually managed to get a whole newsletter, the morning healthcare newsletter, dedicated to RMDs. So I think that really increased the level of renown that we had as an institution representing RMDs, because to get in there is no mean feat. And if you want to have an advertorial within Politico, it costs quite a lot of money. So the fact that they picked up this interview organically was very, very good for us and very, very useful. And hopefully it will be followed up by something in the future as well. But we've at least established that relationship now. And I wanted to talk briefly about the event we had last week at the European Parliament. So perhaps some of you remember the European Parliament Interest Group on RMDs. It existed and was run by EULAR up until about 2019. Then there was a bit of a reshuffle. So Roberta Metsola, who used to chair it, became president of the European Parliament. She's no longer available for such engagements. And the interest group was therefore frozen for a long time. However, we've spent a lot of time this year trying to reactivate the interest group and make sure that we had a launch event, if not on, then around World Arthritis Day. And an interest group is essentially a group of MEPs who want to discuss RMDs, have them more on the policy agenda, and introduce this at the EU level. So this was an in-person breakfast that we held. We wanted to gain more members. We wanted to reaffirm who's going to be part of the committee and also potentially gain some attention externally from stakeholders within the Parliament. We had a good level of attendance. There were about 40 people, and we're very happy that it didn't get cancelled because a couple of other events suffered from the fact that there were very many things happening at the same time. And you have over here the list of speakers that we had. So Margaret, our chair, being the main speaker from our side. Then also Susie from PARI, who was very helpful to give her personal experience. And then our group's chair, MEP Ayus Saliba, MEP Jerkovic, who's very important on the SAND committee, as I mentioned, and a doctor herself, and MEP Lexman, who was focusing more on the social affairs. The event went really well, and we will try to follow up within the next few weeks so that the MEPs can have sort of a sit down between themselves about what kind of agenda they want for this group, what specific things they want to target, and what the next steps would be. And we are in close contact with all of their assistants who basically manage their agenda and who do the bulk of the work. So even though we're saying that the event really was hosted by Ayus Saliba and Lexman, in reality, it was mostly done by us and their assistants in collaboration. Are there any questions on the interest group or the event that we had? Okay. Well, hopefully we can keep you informed about the interest group and how it's going. But if you should happen to get in touch with an MEP who expresses great interest in RMDs, it's entirely possible to suggest that they would join the interest group. So far, it's going to be a relatively small group. Interest groups are informal, but I think we're always on the lookout to see if there would be someone who would be a valuable member to have within the group. And I wanted to show you a couple of photos from the event, just so that you have an idea. And thank you, Rory, for running around and taking all of these. So you kind of get the sense of what the event looked like, what we were able to achieve. And you've got a nice photo here of essentially all of the key MEPs, plus a former health commissioner from Lithuania who is now an MEP, who also attended and gave kind of a very impassioned speech about tackling non-communicable diseases as a whole. So you've got him, you've got Susie, then Jerkovic, Lexman in the pink, Margaret and Ayus Saliba. And on the individual photo here, you have MEP Haji Pantela, who's the former health minister of Cyprus, who met with us individually and was very helpful, again, thanks to Susie. So this is a very good example of how the national connection really helps build things up. And Rory, did you want to add something, or?
Yes, actually, I was just going to do exactly what you've done and introduce who some of these people are. I think just the one other thing to say is that we, throughout our engagement in September and July and in the build up to this event, inviting people to this event, of the MEPs that we've focused on centrally, we've got broader interest than is represented here. So there are other people who have highlighted that they would like to join the interest group. There are others who've said that they very much support the cause, but they don't necessarily have the bandwidth because of their other commitments to play an active role in the interest group, but they'd like to stay informed. So just to say that this isn't the totality of the support that we have already gained for this issue within the European Parliament.
Thank you. And it's really important to note that just because someone's not a member of the interest group, it doesn't mean that they're not interested in RMDs or that they don't want to support us. It's just some of them might have other commitments, or they might essentially be careful about what groups they join, because if they stand out in support of one disease group, the others will immediately contact them and ask to join other groups, which they simply don't have the time for. So it was overall very successful. We're very happy about it, and we'll see what else we can do within the European Parliament and also the other institutions. And I don't think we necessarily need to go through who else was there, but it was not just MEPs. It was also representatives from health organizations, the alliances that we're part of, so the Biomedical Alliance and the European Chronic Disease Alliance, and I think some assistance as well for MEPs who were there just to see what all of this was about. So I think that kind of provides a short overview of what we've been up to in the past, I think 6 months, really. It's been a while since we got started on this, and it's been pretty busy, but also very rewarding. And so I wanted to bring it all back to the main reason why we wanted to talk to you, which is the EULAR Manifesto and the campaign, and how we would like to ask for your help in pushing this forward. The manifesto as it stands has now existed for a couple of months, and this is just a brief overview of what there is. All of these documents are available on the SharePoint. It's the manifesto with our main policy asks in quality of care, research and social policy, a longer document which is very, very detailed. It's about 26 to 30 pages, which you don't have to send to anyone. That's more for kind of being a repository, a library of information for you. And the toolkit, which contains emails that you could send to your policy stakeholders, contains instructions on what to do, how to log things into SharePoint. And, you know, we've talked so much about what is relevant for those of you who are from EU countries, but there is also a toolkit with emails for those of you who are not part of the EU and who would want to be contacting your own national health ministry or stakeholders within your government who also have decision-making power over what is going on within your own healthcare policy space. So there is relevance over there to be found. And on the national level, that is really where we rely on you, especially if you're from non-EU member countries, because we simply don't have the insight into what is relevant to do in your healthcare policy and how we can really support you. So what do we really want to achieve within the second phase of the campaign? The first side was really awareness raising and making sure that people knew that the manifesto existed. And we do want to continue with that to a certain extent, educate new MEPs on the escalating RMD crisis. People are always surprised to hear about the stats that this affects 120 million people within Europe, that we could essentially save 2% of the EU's GDP. It really is a big thing for them to get a sense that this is not just something that's for older people, it's natural, it's normal, it's just arthritis, it just happens, we can't do anything. So it's really important to educate MEPs on what is going on. We also want to target MEPs to join this interest group that we have, and if not formally, then at least get it on their radar so that they follow it, maybe contact us, get a sense of what we are doing. And then we have the toolkit. I don't know, Alex, maybe do you want to talk through that and the SharePoint a little bit, or shall I tackle it?
No, for sure, I can do it. So first of all, I would just send in the chat the link to the SharePoint registration form in case you have not managed to register so far. And I also have a walkthrough that I sent after the first webinar, which we had, but I can find it again and share it with you also that it's a bit more straightforward. I will then quickly share my screen. I hope you can see it. This would be basically the homepage that you should be able to see, and the documents that are available are either in the originals folder, which contain documents in English, or in the translations folder, which has automatic translations with People Pro, which we kindly ask you to to verify and see whether the emails are too polite, are not polite enough for your stakeholders, and you can adjust them as you see fit. And we have both EU and non-EU folders. As you see here, we have the old documents, the EULAR Manifesto, the explanatory document of the manifesto, and here the new documents were added in October, and we have the toolkit, which also comprises the emails and some advice when reaching out to policymakers and tips and tricks, if you will. And of course, the EU Parliament members template emails, the national ministries template emails, they're pretty straightforward. And a fact sheet on RMDs, which basically sums up the EULAR manifesto. And it's an easy to grasp, engaging way for EU policymakers to have a look at that. I will just try to open it quickly so you see how it looks like, in case you haven't done so. Yeah, and yes, it looks like this. It's a 2-pager. Pretty straightforward, but this is only in English, so we couldn't translate it and adapt it design-wise, and we would just recommend that you send it in English. And
if you would like to attach a translation to it, please feel free to do so. It's just, this has been made in Canva, so it's a bit difficult to adjust it while keeping the formatting intact. Yeah.
And then you would have this communication database point, which even now has some entries from the first phase. If you reach out to a policymaker, we would recommend that you would keep us in CC so that we can also attend probably a possible meeting with an MEP in case you have one. And ideally, you can log in your outreach in the shared point so that we have a good overview of what has been going on. And it would be helpful, I guess, for all of us to coordinate and see what you have been doing. But I will send you the walkthrough video so that it's easier and straightforward after this meeting. And of course, the MEPs that we selected for you are in this other place. And here you can group by country, and you just have as you can see, a small selection of MEPs from relevant committees, be the Environment and Health Committee or the subcommittee or the employment one. And yes, as you see, there are not 700 MEPs that you need to contact. And you can find the relevant details here. In case you reach out to a minister, we do not have the contact details for those, so you would have to get those yourselves. Yes, I see a question from Anne, please.
Hi, it's Anna Kerola from Finland. So just to make sure that in the phase 1, we asked for formal endorsements for the EULAR manifesto. And now I saw that the aim is to raise awareness on RMD crisis and promote this interest group. But do we still ask for this formal endorsement for the manifesto, or?
Yeah, I mean, Alexandra,
and
yes, thank you for the question. Alexandra and Roy, you can compliment me on this, but I guess so now the aim is to get them to join our interest group. But my idea is that it would be also nice to have the endorsements of the manifesto, especially on the EULAR website, where all the MEPs that support it. So I think maybe it is some sort of a package deal if they are willing to join the interest group. Maybe they're also willing to support the manifesto. Yes, Roy, please jump in.
So yeah, I'd agree with Alex. I think the caveat that I would give though is that so in advance of the elections, MEPs are very keen to endorse various positions and manifestos through which they can promote themselves. So if they can be shown to be supporting certain causes, that's kind of great. And manifestos are kind of an election tool. Post-election, there's less relevance for them in endorsing a manifesto or promoting that particular manifesto. So what I agree with Alex, that if they're prepared to support the manifesto, that's great. They may not think it's that relevant, which is why we've pivoted slightly to this kind of reformatted document, and we've got this one pager which highlights the crisis and tries to educate them. And I think what our kind of workaround is that we're trying to get MEPs to care about this issue, join the interest group, and ultimately we will try and get the interest group to adopt the EULAR manifesto as its manifesto. So yeah, I think the primary objectives, as you highlighted, Anna, are kind of education on the crisis and getting MEPs to support the interest group, and then we want to highlight the manifesto to them. But I think securing their endorsement might be hard at this stage. So I'd say it's kind of a secondary goal, if that makes sense.
I think you've pretty much covered it, Rory. So it's a nice to have. If you manage to get some of them to endorse the manifesto, of course that makes us happy, but it's more relevant to secure their interest for the interest group. Yes, Ruth.
So thanks for clarifying that. So our goal is to approach that's what I understand from this meeting. We should approach our MEPs that you have in that list with a request to A, endorse the manifesto, and B, to join the interest group. That's what we should do. Is that correct?
Basically, Alex, maybe it would be helpful to show the draft email from the toolkit, because we've already, as Alex mentioned before, we've already written the emails for you. You can change them in whatever way you like, but the core message is to introduce RMDs, and yes, so there's just an invitation to have a look at the manifesto and the interest group, and then arrange ideally a meeting so that you could do a proper pitch, a proper introduction.
May I ask, this email is in English. Is the email also translated in German, or should we do that ourselves? Because they probably would rather be astounded by an English email coming from an Austrian society.
Yes, so there are translations as well, as you can see in this folder. The only caveat is that you would have to verify the translation.
So that's okay. That's the one that I thought it were documents that were translated, but it's actually the email.
Exactly, the emails and the manifesto
that is translated. Okay.
Exactly.
Everything is translated. I mean, the documents for you are mostly for the convenience of your colleagues who might not feel so secure in English. But the emails are already translated. It's just that if in a certain country you want a very formal email, the software we used might not translate that properly, so you will need to change it a little bit. Yes, Alessandra. Thank you. Alessandra, you had a question?
I think you are on mute in case you...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me? So as a step manifesto here in Italy, we start to collaborate it with politicians in Rome. I don't know if you any heard about our ANMAR is collaborated in the inter-parliament, make some work in inter-parliament. And this we received this document also at a local level. And now in this moment, I'm working in our country to the table with our local politician. So can we use this second step document to effort our job that we're doing now?
Yes, thank you for the question. We heard from Anna Maria Iannocco that you've done quite a lot of work on the national level. And
yes, but now also at the local level, not only national, but we translate it in a local level, you know, in a small country. I'm working now in my country in Perugia, so we start to local political. So I don't know if we can use this document to effort our job.
you're very welcome to use it in whatever helps you, really. It's just, it was designed for the EU level or for the national level. But if you think it helps you, you're very welcome to use any part of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Probably the part of the interest group would not apply to them because there will not be members of the European Parliament, just locally elected officials.
We have a question from Lene.
Yes, hello, my name is Lene Vandrup Thomsen from Denmark. I would like to ask you, is there a deadline for this sending the email and the documents to our national parliaments? Is there a deadline, a special time where you're going to meet in the group, or?
I think.
Yeah, go, Rory.
I think, no, there's no specific deadline. I mean, I think ideally the sooner the better. And I think, we're hoping that, I think, in an ideal world, this would happen before mid-December. So, if it would be good to kind of, essentially what we're trying to do is before, because the Parliament is still quite new, it kind of formed in July or July, and then they went on summer holiday, and then they got back together in September. And before the MEPs form into other groups or take on other priorities, we're trying to get them to focus on RMDs so that we can create a kind of a coalition of support that we can use for the rest of the Parliament. So I think ideally, if these emails could go out relatively soon and we could kind of try and complete this engagement before mid-December, that would be ideal. But if that's not possible, you can always do it later. It's always worth trying to engage with MEPs and trying to get them to support this group.
I think
that's another question. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Do you want us to send this email in collaboration with health professionals and scientific, like we did early on?
I mean, if you can, that's the ideal path forward.
Yes, so it's still, we did that last time, so I'll try to do it again if it is recommended by you.
Thank you. That would be fantastic. And maybe, Rory, when is the Danish presidency happening? We've got another 6 months until then, right?
Yes, it's 25 half. We have had a meeting with Roy in August about this.
Yes, fantastic. So that would also be very relevant to keep in mind. And we heard from multiple people from the permanent representations, so the little embassies to the EU, that anything that a presidency would be suggesting usually has to go through the national channel. So their contacting the health ministry is very, very relevant for us.
Okay.
Yes, could I briefly say something on that, Alexandra?
Go on.
So I think because we've spoken a lot about MEPs and MEPs joining the interest group, and I would say, perhaps that is the primary thing that we want to achieve with this campaign. But we've also provided you with letters to national ministries, and we would also like you to highlight the RMD crisis to national ministries if you can. I think so. First thing would be probably the European Parliament and MEPs, but if you can, it would also be great to promote to national ministries. And I think just one thing that many of you will be aware of, but not all of you might be, is that the member states, of course, have a huge amount of influence over what the agenda of the EU is. So decisions are made at the European Council level, which is where, there will be a European Council meeting on health. There might be a European Council meeting on employment and social affairs. And the relevant ministries from each country will attend those council meetings. And the conclusions of those council meetings will inform what the Commission does. So if we can highlight this as an important issue to member states, that will affect the work of the Commission from the top. And if we can get the European Parliament to support us and to put pressure on the European Commission to do more on this issue, that will influence the work of the European Commission from beneath, if you like. And obviously this is just one letter that we're asking you to send and one meeting program we're asking you to pursue with national ministers. But I just think on an ongoing basis, when you're doing the work that you all are brilliantly in country to influence your national politics, also just kind of keep in mind that encouraging them to do more at a European level as well as at a national level will be a helpful thing.
And if you should happen to come from a country that is smaller or has fewer citizens, that is no object really, because at the EU level, when the member states get together, the presidency has the decision-making power of what they want to put on the agenda, and for a lot of issues you need unanimity. So this is not proportional. So it is no object whether you are from Malta or you're from Germany. At this level, they are both equal in terms of standing, in case that is a concern for anyone. So I think we have a couple of minutes left. I would just perhaps summarize that it hopefully is not a scary prospect, that all that is really being asked of you is to have a look at the emails, check that they fit the language that you want to use with your policymakers, your politicians, send them along with the one-pager to healthcare MEPs, MEPs interested in healthcare, or policy stakeholders that are interested in healthcare. This could be your health minister, this could be someone from the social affairs ministry, anyone who you think would be relevant to speak to about these sort of things, and see if they respond. Maybe try to follow up with them, and if they respond, please let us know, because especially if you're meeting MEPs, we would love to be there. Of course, it's a bit different if you want to talk with your own health minister in your own language. It's a bit less that we can provide you with, but we would still love to hear about it so that we know what has been done. Yes, Ruth.
I must ask for real, very specific aims. So I have the aim for approaching our MEPs to join the EPICs and to endorse the manifesto, so that in the further steps the manifesto is endorsed or adopted by the EPIC to as their own. That's totally clear for me what I should do with my email. What should I ask from the health ministry? Because that is probably different from in every country. So is there anything that you would ask us to do, or just that they are aware, or is there any agenda from the advocacy? And then just to check, the deadline was December 17th. Is that right? Did I write that down right?
Ideally before Christmas, yes, because then for 3-4 weeks everyone is out. Alex, maybe it would be helpful to show the email to the national policy stakeholder. And Rory, did you want to say something in the meantime?
Yeah, I was actually raising my hand on a separate point, but I can just, yes, two things to clarify perhaps from my side. I think just on timing, there would be no point sending the emails on December the 17th. So I think in an ideal world, the deadline for the completion of this engagement would be mid-December. So, ideally we'd want you to send the emails over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then make follow-up calls. If that's not possible, it might be better to wait till January. So I think just that guidance on timing. In terms of what to talk about, what to ask for from national policymakers, I think there are 2 things there. Our first objective is education. So our first objective is to really highlight RMDs as a critical issue to national policymakers, and to really put the ball in their court and ask them, what are they doing? What more do they plan to do to address this crisis? Because there's a little bit of background there, which is that a lot of the focus, although there is an increasing amount of focus on non-communicable diseases in EU and national policy, a lot of it is focused on, as you'll all be aware, on high mortality diseases. So we want to educate them and make the point that rheumatic and musculoskeletal diseases, while not necessarily responsible for as many deaths as some other high mortality diseases, they have a huge burden on society, which is invisible and has been invisible for too long and has been overlooked. So that's the education is the first objective. The second part, in terms of a specific policy ask, I think, as I say, we can put the ball to their court to a degree and say, can you tell us what you're doing about this? But then beyond that, we have the EULAR Manifesto. So I think, hopefully we've already tried to send that to them, but I think also we can, present the manifesto to them and, ask if they can support the measures within it. I think beyond that, we're slightly, so I think that is a general approach that you can all take in country. Beyond that, however, I think there's obviously a degree of national, there's flexibility, and can be kind of, national decision making about what priority you might want to highlight the most. So, within the manifesto, you'll see that we highlight chronic shortages of rheumatologists. We highlight, difficulty accessing, maintaining, and returning to work. Depending on what topic is highest priority within your personal or within your national agenda, and also within the national policymakers' agenda, you can kind of pick from that list as to what you might want to, focus on in terms of a policy ask, if that makes sense.
Thanks.
Fantastic. So we have 2 minutes. Rory, did you want to still make your point? Because I'm not seeing any hands up yet.
I did, and I've just remembered what it was, which is just in time, which is just to reiterate Alexandra's point earlier on about keeping EULAR in copy and using the reporting template. And just to explain, this is not, hopefully this doesn't come across as EULAR centrally being very kind of controlling. The purpose of this is that we will, throughout the course of the Parliament, we will be engaging with these MEPs that we're asking you to engage with now on a number of different topics. If there's a report, if there's a bit of policy or legislation coming up that we need their help to influence, we will be engaging with them. So knowing what their engagement has been like with you is really helpful for us to know how we should proceed. The second point is that we don't want for any MEPs in these key committees who could join the interest group to not have been asked. So if you don't think you're going to be able to do the outreach, or if you want to but you end up not having time, then we will pick that up. So it's important for us to know whether you've been successful, you know, whether you've been able to send the emails, whether you've been able to make follow-up calls, so that we know that we have to do it if you haven't, which is fine. But obviously we think it would be more impactful if the email came from national stakeholders. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, that that kind of copying in of EULAR and using the reporting template is really helpful to our ongoing collaboration, rather than us wanting to kind of control what you are doing.
I think that's a good final point to make. So we are on time. I'm very happy that we managed. I hope this has been useful for you. I'm not seeing any other hands up, but if afterwards you see that a question hasn't been answered that you really had, or something comes to mind, or if you didn't want to speak on this webinar, you are very welcome to email us directly at publicaffairs@eular.org, and we will then pick it up. And this could be anything related to the content, to what we've been doing, to technical questions about the SharePoint. So we would be happy to pick that up and answer. Barring that, thank you all so much for coming. It's very good to see you all here. We're very glad to have you all on board, and we really appreciate anything and everything you do in order to support, because we cannot do all of this without you. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a good afternoon. I see a question from Stelina, but we can answer that via email with the issue with the SharePoint. Right. Thank you all so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.